Hello YouTube bikers. I just wanted to kind of show you the clutch gear assembly on my VFR 750 back in place and go over a couple tips in addition to what I was mentioning earlier. This job is simple, but it's actually quite a bitch. And it's quite a bitch because this spring-loaded assembly in here that we showed you earlier with the rollers and the bearing and the rear gear, all that stuff has to go together while the spring tension on those rollers allows the center hub to pass through the starter clutch. What I mean is, when you put this together, you're going to put all the springs and all the needle rollers in, and then you're going to try and fit it on this rear gear here, you know, while it's on the bench like I had earlier. You're going to try and put all this stuff together before you bolt it up. And when you do that, you're going to come into a problem where one roller wants to pop out because they actually move centrifugally, and when they do, it causes them to open the opening there for the shaft to come through. So the secret to getting this son of a bitch together is to rotate the starter clutch while you're trying to put it down onto this rear gear. The rear gear has, of course, a circle, comes up through, with splines on the inside, and when you're installing it, you have to rotate the loaded starter clutch in order to get those rollers to separate out and the male part to fit through the female part. Those of you who are doing this will totally understand what I'm talking about. Those of you who aren't doing this are going to go, what the hell is he talking about? I don't get it. But anyway, for those of you noobs, this is a clutch. There's your clutch plates, and all this comes apart, spring loaded, and you've got all your clutch plates in there. And then your drive gear is your primary gear behind there. On this VFR in particular is a little different. This is your pulse generator or pulse alternator. It's magnetic, of course. It picks up the revolutions there. And this is the primary cover. And I've got my gasket back on here. This thing is ready to be put back together. The mighty VFR shall live again. And this is Moto 1 synthetic. I suggest using a synthetic because you'll just get tons of miles out of your already awesome Japanese bike. I use a little RTV on the dowel pinpoints. I'm not a silicone mechanic. There are people that are. I'm not a fan. But, you know, I come from a long line of British car restoration, and boy, we just like our stuff leaky. So I use the appropriate gasket. I torque it to the appropriate amount in a crisscross fashion, and typically no leaks for the first 7 years. So this is her all back together, and these must be torqued at, I believe it's 40 Newton meters, 30 foot-pounds for those of you US guys, non-Aussie types. This center bolt, I believe, is going to be 90 foot-pounds, possibly 80 foot-pounds. You'll need to look that up. But you tighten these three first, and then you'll tighten the center nut with the washer. This whole assembly here is very fiddly. There's a lot of technique involved in getting this to go in right. I promise you that. You have to do a lot of things to make this flange meet the roller pin that I was showing you earlier. You have to kind of spin it and wiggle it and separate this back gear while the roller bearing is in place, and make a little air gap between the two. That way, when you're screwing these in by hand, this plate will recess into the body here. Because if you don't, there'll be a gap and the plate will stick out, and you're like, what's going on here? You kind of got to set it on there, separate the back from the front a little bit, maybe this much, and then you start doing this by hand, and it all kind of clicks together. It'll throw you for a loop, that's for sure. It sure did me. It is a pretty straightforward job, but there's a little technique involved in it. So, best of luck with your VFR starter clutch. These all go around 20,000 to 40,000. I guess it just depends on the bike. Mine quit at 19.5 is what this quit at, and then you can get the new parts about 160 bucks plus the rollers and all that is somewhere around 170. I got all my stuff from Bike Bandit, came pretty quick, no big deal. So yeah, if you have questions about this job, shoot me stuff in the comments, and like and subscribe and all that stuff. Until next times.